To this week's edition of Roundtable Talk. This evening we have as our guest the new minister with responsibility for tourism, culture, sustainable development and civil aviation. Quite a heavy bit of responsibility there. You're new, you're about 3 weeks into the business. You've just come off a very hard-fought campaign. How is it going so far? How are you settling into your new role?
Well, thank you, Teresa, for having me. Let me greet everyone who's viewing on V63, both on the television and those on social media. I'm happy to be here to share with you some information. It has been quite a hectic couple of weeks on the road, in office and meetings. Just today we are fresh out of cabinet, and I'm here joining you in studio.
Yes, so it's how is it? How does it feel?
It's
transitioning from Parliament as a speaker and now into ministerial duties.
Hard work is nothing new to me. I've been at it for the past 10 years. I've been managing my own law practice. Doing long nights, long days, and easily I'm fitting into the role as minister with responsibility for tourism, sustainable development, civil aviation, and culture. And it's quite an interesting mix of portfolios, but there's the interconnectivity. And it's quite important at this point that I breathe some energy within the ministry. It's a situation of COVID, but we have to be a bit resilient and resolute in what we're doing, and not to wave a white flag and say, well, the industry is dead because of COVID, but we have to remain focused, and we have to use this opportunity to see how as much we can assist stakeholders, persons who are involved within the industry, and move together in the direction that is going to benefit not just the stakeholders but the economy as well. Tourism plays a very important role too in the economy, and it's a big contributor to our gross domestic product.
Okay, just a reminder, we're with Carlos James, who is the Minister for Tourism, Culture, Sustainable Development and Civil Aviation here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Let's talk first about tourism. We'll talk about the different sectors. We'll also talk about what your vision is for the constituency that you represent. How do you propose to ensure that tourism remains resilient in the midst of the turbulent times we are having here? And I speak specifically of COVID-19.
Well, one of the things immediately when I took charge of the ministry, the ministerial portfolio, I also have a new permanent secretary. So we have been very actively engaging the various stakeholders. Very early on the outset, I wanted to have a symposium this month with all of the key stakeholders within the ministry, but upon further advice, it's best to roll it out early in the new year. It's going into 9 mornings and Christmas. It's a busy period for a lot of persons who are involved in the industry. But we have to immediately assess, first importantly, leakages. Where is it that we have lost opportunity, not just as a result of COVID, but as a result of a high import bill among stakeholders within the industry, and where we can produce and manufacture stuff here and provide services here in St. Vincent that is imported. And it's one of the first things that we have to look at in terms of saving on our imports. Secondly, we have to also look at what it is that we can enhance within the ministry itself and within the industry, so that we are able to best support the stakeholders, support the industry. And we have to strategically look at all of these things in a very studied and scientific way, in a measured way, and before we can be very actively engaged in addressing the issues of the stakeholders within the industry. It's not just taking paint and whitewashing but really going to the root of the issues and identifying what are some of the challenges that we are facing in the industry as a result of COVID-19 and how best we can address them going forward. And we have been assessing and looking at a number of different initiatives which we will roll out in the coming year.
So what are some of the challenges?
Some exciting issues that we have to address, but some of the challenges quite naturally in terms of the industry itself is based on numbers, and based on numbers in terms of figures, in terms of the economic numbers, and also based on numbers in terms of people, because it's driven around services. And if you don't have the number of arrivals who are projected to come within the country to contribute to the economy in terms of the spending and so on, it adversely affects everyone within the industry, a trickle-down effect. For instance, someone who travels by air, the person may more than likely, as a stayover visitor, would stay at a hotel. If the rooms are not filled, then there's no income coming there to the hotelier, or even the taxes that we would naturally get from that aspect of the industry. There's the transport from the airport to the hotel, and if the taximen aren't able to pick up the tourists who are coming from the cruise ships or coming from the international airport, then that in itself poses another challenge. There's also the issues surrounding restaurants, and most of the stakeholders within the industry themselves are chiefly among them the persons within the economy and within the industry that has been adversely affected. And I think tourism has certainly taken a big dent. And there's also the spill-off with the linkages in the agricultural sector, the fisher folk who would normally sell to the hotels. Then you have the farmers who supply the hotels. One farmer who was from North Leeward said to me, well, his sales are down by as much as 90%, because some of these hotels which would normally order through him to fill their kitchens and to produce, to get the food and so on, they themselves have said, look, listen, we don't have the capacity within our room stock to really buy from you. Mm-hmm. And that is partly one of the reasons why the government had created the Love Box initiative. A lot of persons, when that initiative started, thought that, okay, well, it's more or less giving persons produce and so on from farms. But the important part of it was actually taking the load off the farmers and really creating the market and also putting money in the hands of the farmers, which again stimulates the economy, and where we've seen economic growth even within the challenging times. So within the ministry itself and within the industry, the tourism industry, I think the stakeholders, they've been the hardest hit. Other persons will have a daily job that they go to, but the taximen are parked on the stands, the hotels are empty. And these are some of the challenges that we have to grapple with within the industry.
Notwithstanding all of those challenges, things have actually been happening while we are experiencing all of these. Before you talk about some of the gains, some of the things that have been happening, some of the latest developments, somebody is asking already in the first segment, how do you see the experience? On your new ministry, how do you see the experience? Is it challenging, or are you getting along well? I don't know.
Well, it's challenging in an exciting way, in the sense that I'm not new to hard work, and it's something I'm committed to, more or less, if you'd want to say, bringing the industry back and bringing tourism back post-COVID. And that's one of my main focus and challenge at this point. And I'm hoping within the new year we'll roll out a number of programs and initiatives that are going to be able to put the economy and the industry in itself on a good footing from a tourism standpoint.
Okay, so before we go to our first break, let's talk about some of the things that have been happening in the interim in terms of developments within the sector.
Well, one of the things I more or less inherited this from former Minister Mackey, who did some tremendous work within the ministry and also within the industry. Both the Tourism Authority and the ministry have been working to promote a lot of domestic tourism. And that is something I know that has been on the cards for a very long time. But now with the emergence of COVID, they're able to effectively capitalize and roll out a lot of staycations and promotions that are more targeted in the local market. And one of the things that I've noted from some of the stakeholders within the industry is that they have moved to having, rather than having high rates, then you have local rates. So persons can maybe take a day pass to a hotel, or a restaurant would have a particular package that is different to accommodate locals who may want to dine and to indulge in what they have to offer in terms of the services. And I'm hoping that we can see tours and packages from the tour operators as well, those operating the yachts and those operating on land. And we have to make use of the domestic market and see how we can generate income and provide the service to local persons who want to take advantage of that.
So how can we make this affordable for locals to participate? I think that is one of
and that's one of the key points, is that we have seen gradually some stakeholders in the industry changing prices, moving to have combos and packages targeting the domestic market. I know, for instance, some of the hotels in the Grenadines are offering the staycations and even on mainland. And it is something even post-COVID. We're definitely going to have to look at how we can see carve out a market for domestic tourism, and it's not so much the great focus on the arrivals and the persons who are coming in the market itself from the international destinations, but what it is that Vincentians can utilize here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines as a tourist. I made a point recently about going to some of the local sites, and the local persons would have a difficulty paying to go into maybe the Botanic Gardens or to Darkview Falls. And why should I pay $5? Because I'm living here. But just spending that $5 is contributing to the enhancement of the facility, the resources that are derived from that. I made mention recently of, instead of using your private transport every day, maybe perhaps one day per week or one day per month, use the service of a local taxi operator. And that in itself puts the money in the hands of a taxi operator, who then naturally spends that money within the economy. So we're looking at the economic indicators, which so far, though despite the challenges of COVID, we have seen St. Vincent and the Grenadines, though adversely affected, we have not had that serious of a decline in terms of the negative growth as opposed to our sister islands within the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union and so on, and even in the CARICOM. We have seen substantially there's been a dip, maybe a -4, -5, as compared to some countries that are -20, 25, and in the teens and high numbers.
Okay, we'll take our first break and be back right after this.
Fire and dice. Together on one scratch ticket can make your dreams come true. Yes, it's Fire and Dice. The new $10 scratch game with thousands of dollars to be won. Match your numbers with any of the winning numbers and win the prize shown up to $125,000. You can double or triple your prize with Fire and Dice. Available from all lotto agents and runners. There's cash to catch with just a scratch.
This evening on the VC3 News Update, the National 9 Mornings Festival to be launched this weekend. Director of the Pan-Caribbean Partnership Against HIV and AIDS, Dr. Rosamond Adams, encourages Vincentians to get tested to determine their HIV status. And all members of the new parliament have officially been sworn in. This evening on the VC3 Sports Update, locally, The first division of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Football Federation's National Club Championships kick off this evening at the Victoria Park. The penultimate round of matches in the St. Vincent Netball Association's Fast 5 competition will be played this evening from 5 p.m. Regionally, West Indies Test captain Jason Holder has signed with Sydney Sixers for a 3-game cameo in the Big Bash League, which bowls off next week. Join us at 7 p.m. for these stories and more on the VC3 News Updates.
Welcome back. As we resume our talk, there are some questions waiting for you, Mr. Minister. The first, are there any provisions for water sports on mainland St. Vincent for both locals and tourists?
Well, that's something we're going to have to look into at some point. Perhaps whether we can explore the idea of maybe zoning the areas where we can have water sport activities. It's something I'm open to, and it's something that we'll have to obviously see whether the government is interested in moving in that direction. But it's something that can boost the industry and the economy. And I'm open to suggestions and ideas of how we can build the tourism product on the brand and brand St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Okay, and there's another. How has the concept of staycations been working locally? Any success, and has there been any feedback from resorts and hotels on this?
Well, one of the things, a number of stakeholders in the industry have had some success with it. You would not see naturally a lot of Vincentians going to hotels and moving in. But, over a period of time, that it is something, a part of the industry that we can build on. And even post-COVID, this is something that we obviously must capitalize on to see how we can provide the services to locals and to tap into the domestic market.
Okay, just before we took our break, we were talking about some of the things that have been happening, even while the tourism sector is not as active or vibrant as it is now. And one of the things that you didn't mention was the fact that we're going to be having flights out of the UK sometime next year.
As early as mid next year, June, July, we're hoping to see the inaugural flight of Virgin Atlantic Airways to St. Vincent. I know the Tourism Authority and the ministry, they've been working hard. Glenn Beach, who's the CEO, and his team, and previously Ses Mackey as Minister of Tourism, they've been putting in a lot of tremendous work in ensuring that we get enough flights coming to St. Vincent, because you have out of the Canada, Air Canada is coming out of Toronto, we have Cal coming out of New York, and American Airlines. Now Virgin is coming out of the UK, and quite often we've had the challenge of how are we getting international flights to Argyle. And we built the airport successfully. It's now completed, and we're now seeing within a matter of a few months and a few years to the opening of the airport, it's operating, and international flights are coming. It's going to be exciting, and it's exciting for two main reasons. And one of that is when you look at the contribution of travel and tourism to the international economy. You're talking roughly maybe $8.9 trillion annually. The world's GDP, tourism and travel, takes up a chunk of that. That's roughly about 10%. In the Eastern Caribbean Union, it's about 43%. And in St. Vincent, it's about 35%. And these numbers are quite high within the currency union, and they're quite high within our country and our economy. It shows that tourism and travel has a very important role to play in the economy. It's a very important ministry. It's a very important portfolio, as a matter of fact. And once we're able to get enough flights here, international flights, and not just from the UK and from North America, but even as far as the Middle East, interconnectivity through the UK or through Miami, and we get flights to St. Vincent, we then have to look at the issue of hotels, where the persons on the flight's going to stay. And then the idea and the vision behind building the Marriott, getting the Holiday Inn Express up, and which we have started construction, the groundworks on the Holiday Inn Express. Then there's Royal Mill, there's Beaches by Sandals and Black Sands, and quite a number of other hotels. We're looking at a significant boost within the industry within the next 2-3 years. And that is something that a lot of persons are looking forward to. It's going to be an exciting time for tourism. It's going to be an exciting time for the ministry and the stakeholders within the ministry. And naturally, you're going to see people moving from traditional jobs to jobs within the services sector, because that is where the monies are going to be circulating. The economy is going to see a big boost from the tourism industry. And I'm quite pleased to be given the opportunity to lead the charge in shaping and molding the new St. Vincent in terms of the industry, the tourism industry post-COVID, well into the next few years.
What are the plans to prepare the populace for the service industry? What plans are there to really prepare Vincent?
Very, very important question. And one of the things that we often times would hear the conversation around jobs, unemployment. But we have to first provide the necessary training. And just using my constituency of North Leeward as an example, a few months ago I put together a proposal before the realization that I was going to be the Minister of Tourism. There was a proposal put to Cabinet through the Minister of Education where I asked for Cabinet to give consideration to the rehabilitation and the opening of a North Leeward Technical Institute. This technical institute will naturally provide training in terms of the services sector, hospitality and bartending services, and all of these varying skill sets which persons are able to gather some qualifications and to move into the services sector within the industry itself. We know of the pilot project at the Center for the Center at Diamonds, which is the Hospitality Institute there as well. But we have to look at creating a number of centers of excellence and across the country, where we are able to provide the necessary training. I know the Tourism Authority, they have been big on quality assurance. They've been doing a number of stakeholder training sessions, including this week where we had a week of activities to mark Tourism Month.
Correct,
they've been involved in a number of programs in terms of training for our stakeholders. And they've been big on that. And one of the things I can say I've seen over a period of time, the quality of service at local restaurants and hotels, even the taxi operators, they're in uniforms, they don't rush to the cruise ship boat, they line the taxis up and and at the airport they do the same thing. So we have seen a quality and the standard of service
it's
that is being
funny that you say that, because here is someone mentioning about the flights that are coming to SVG from various countries. Already our hotels, Airbnbs, etc., all the way to the ground level to fully accommodate visitors.
Right, and if you go on the websites, the Airbnb, you can find a number of homestays and smaller guest houses, and they have been visited by the Tourism Authority as well. They have been certified. So I know a lot of work has been put in place from the ministry and from the Tourism Authority in that regard. It's one of the concerns from me personally though is the standard which in terms of some of our ecotourism sites. We've put in a lot of work with national parks and so on to rehabilitate and to have some of these sites up and running in terms of running water and bathrooms and so on. But we can do a lot more to enhance them. And I
And to
think
keep them-
and to naturally
Yeah.
keep them in a particular standard
Yes.
which can accommodate persons and guests. And I think one of the focus going into 2021 will be to look at a number of sites across St. Vincent and the Grenadines and how we can make it work in a better way for not just locals who visit these sites, but also tourists and guests who are traveling to St. Vincent to indulge in our country.
Okay. Someone else is asking, when are we going to have something done about the population of stray dogs throughout SVG? They're not a good sight in the interest of our tourism industry. I don't know if that falls under your...
Well, it somewhat doesn't, but I've seen a report on it from former Minister Mackey, and it's something I have to look at as well. I've seen some recommendations which naturally we'll have to put in place as it really is. But generally, keeping our environment clean, not just the stray dogs, but garbage.
And we'll talk about that
waste,
because I know you're interested in the environment.
So it's a broader framework of education and public awareness about the environment, and that is a big part. It's mainland St. Vincent is more eco-friendly. It's an eco-tourist destination, and if we don't take care of the environment and what the natural resource that we have to offer as a package and as a product, then how are we to sell St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, outside of the sun, sea and sand and the beautiful waters of the Grenadines? We have to look at how we deal with the issue of the environment and the disposal of waste as well in some respects.
Okay, and somebody is saying an initiative for tourism could be inviting folks from around the world to SVG to work remotely here. Many people are at home working virtually. Just an idea.
Well, it's not just an idea. It's actually something that we're looking at rolling out in the new year. It's one of the flagship programs we're hoping to roll out very soon. Once we have all of the various stakeholders. In fact, we are guided by the Chief Medical Officer and her team as to how we proceed on an initiative of that nature. And pretty soon we're hoping to have something on paper where we can present and move in that direction to market St. Vincent as one of those places where you can come as a workation. Naturally, there are other countries doing it, but we will develop a niche around it, and we have to put our marketing persons to work to sell the product that we have to offer in relation to that. There's also the issue of considering having the yachting sector move in a direction where we can perhaps still operate in a way where we formulate bubbles, where you restrict the yachts from going to particular areas, and we say, look, if you're quarantined and you can sail within that particular zone, and we have a zone for the persons who are coming to indulge in our waters and boost the blue economy and
very interesting
and so on.
concept.
So these are things that we're looking at, and in a very creative way, but being guided by the protocols, the health protocols that are available to us. And of course, with the emergence of new medicine and vaccines surrounding the COVID-19. But some of these things can work and will work going into the new year.
It's time for a second break. We'll be back in just a moment.
This evening on the VC3 News Update, the National 9 Mornings Festival to be launched this weekend. Director of the Pan-Caribbean Partnership Against HIV and AIDS, Dr. Rosamond Adams, encourages Vincentians to get tested to determine their HIV status. And all members of the new parliament have officially been sworn in. This evening on the VC3 Sports Update, locally, the first division of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Football Federation's National Club Championships kick off this evening at the Victoria Park. The penultimate round of matches in the St. Vincent Netball Association's Fast 5 competition will be played this evening from 5 p.m. Regionally, West Indies Test captain Jason Holder has signed with Sydney Sixers for a 3-game cameo in the Big Bash League, which bowls off next week. Join us at 7 p.m. for these stories and more on the VC3 News Update.
Welcome back. Minister, what are some of the immediate priorities as far as your ministry is concerned? Not just strictly tourism per se, but what are some of the immediate priorities that you would definitely try to implement, say, in the next 6 months to a year?
Well, we're at present looking at putting in place the budget proposal for 2021. And some of the initiatives, as I mentioned a bit earlier, with the tourism bubbles that we'll create for the yachties and the vocation program that we're looking to roll out early in the new year. But importantly, there's a stakeholders meeting I'm hoping to have in early January, bringing together all of the stakeholders, the taxi operators, the hoteliers, the restaurant operators, basically everyone within the industry, and including the culture, because we oftentimes sometimes forget that the cultural component of the industry really coming here to St. Vincent. And for instance, I gave the example recently. We look at Kingston in itself. We're here at the studio at Victoria Park, but it's rich in so much history that someone who comes on a tour from a cruise ship or through an international carrier may not necessarily know that this park, as simple as it is, has some historical significance. It's the park where we took down the Union Jack and mounted our 3 diamonds. Well, at the time, the national flag, which was not yet the 3 diamonds flags. But then Carnival, it's the home for Carnival. And perhaps when we look at the local tours within Kingston, we must bring tourists here. We must develop, tell the story around Kingston, how this park became known as Victoria Park. Perhaps even look at rebranding and renaming it to Emancipation Park. We look at bringing in a lot of the cultural components of the industry, the pan men, how a steel pan site is developed, how a pan is made, how a mass constructed, and we can have the actual visual of these things happening, and the costume, decor, and so on. I don't know if you remember who won Queen of the Bands in 1989, but we can have photographs and we can have tours that depict these things and tell a story. Every king of the bands and every queen of the bands tells a story. It tells a narrative in our historical context. You go to the Botanic Gardens. It's the oldest in the Western Hemisphere, but apart from the flora and the beautiful scenery that is there, but how much of it, of the culture come out from it? The dance and the national way and the quadrille and local poets, musicians, so we can bring to life our historical sites. I know in Fort Charlotte there is a project proposal that is being developed to more or less remodel Fort Charlotte and to have 4-child that come back to bringing it back to life. Essentially, we'd have technology, audiovisual technology. We can even go a bit forward and add not just the mannequins who will be there dressed in the colonial wear, but we will have the local persons doing a reenactment of the Garifuna.
Something like an interpretation.
Precisely. And outside of the electronic interpretation center, we can have the physical reenactment of what it was like then. And we tell a story. We go to the Château Park on the boundary of North Windward and North Central. That also tells a story. We develop it. We have the huts and the canoes, and we have the Modongo, and we go to Rose Bank, which was one of the last indigenous communities. It's a fishing village, but it has a rich cultural history. So it's Rose Hall. And we have to bring culture to all of the historical sites and to marry all the components of the industry so that it brings to life the story of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Garifuna, the Caribs, and the
rich cultural,
the rich diversity of Vincentian life. Carnival. It's not just carnival during June, July, but if there's a tour of a cruise ship that docks in February, we can see some live performances within Victoria Park or Emancipation Park. This is carnival. It tells the story of our ancestors and coming through. And we have to live it. We have to really dream it, but also live it and reimagine what tourism nationally can do for our industry in terms of all of these components I've mentioned. Would require dancers, would require poets, would require historians and writers and musicians. To bring the persons to the various stores will require taxi operators, tour guides, narrators. It essentially touches almost every component of the industry. And of course, there's food. A big component of that is our local food. All of the local chefs and persons in the restaurants and so on can move in that direction to cook more local food. That we can say this is something called pilau. I'm not sure how many North American or European tourists who come here knew before coming to St. Vincent what pilau, what is pilau, or callaloo soup. And we have to be proud of our rich history. It's one of the things that we've been fortunate to have in St. Vincent. We can't let our culture and our way of life just die. So you go to restaurants and they offer burgers and fries as opposed to callaloo soup, as you mentioned. And we have to embrace our local culture and our local cuisine. And it's just so much that is there that is just bursting if we really put a focus on how we develop the industry and we sell mainland St. Vincent in particular. It is something that I think can generate a level of uniqueness to St. Vincent that is not ordinarily packaged as a tourism destination, but something that is unique. And as we said, the Caribbean you're looking for, this is St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the real richness and diversity. So we have to package it, and we have to sell it, and we have to sell it right. And essentially my job being here and charting the way forward is to essentially take that vision and turn it into reality. And of course, turn it into an income-generating reality that is going to work for St. Vincent and the Grenadines and to boost the contribution of tourism to the gross domestic product.
Wow. I like the idea of Emancipation Park. A question here for you. Information dissemination has not always been what it ought to be. What are your tentative plans to ensure that there's a radical policy and implementation shift towards ensuring that the public is kept well informed about all issues involving your ministry?
Well, we'll be working strategically in that direction. I've had some discussions with the staff at the ministry as to how we can address those issues and how we can get more information out to persons. I know in particular the communications unit, they were working in partnership with the Tourism Authority. Just this week, they were focusing on a digital marketing training. And this involves training with stakeholders within the industry itself, those who are involved in accommodation and transportation, and essentially getting the message out to stakeholders and having that level of quality in terms of the information that is there, the efficiency of our service and packaging everything that and getting that out is something that we have to obviously work on. And they have been doing a pretty good job, and we have to see how we can enhance that.
Okay, how much promotion is being done to link medical marijuana with sustainable development? There's much potential there also.
There's certainly the potential, and sustainable tourism and wellness tourism. These are things that we have to look at in the new year as well as the new term, focusing heavily on medicinal tourism as well, medicinal cannabis. The idea of persons coming here to use medicinal cannabinoids and medicinal oils and so on for treatment, glaucoma, cancer research and so on, is not something that is beyond our imagination. It is happening because we are seeing so far the provisions being put in place for licensed operators who are coming here, investors who are coming to set up. Local persons are also getting licensed. Traditional cultivators are being licensed. And we have to obviously streamline in the new terms how best we can package St. Vincent as a wellness destination. And there's already conversations with persons here on the ground doing just that. And pretty soon we'll be hearing a lot more about these things.
Okay, SVG has some amazing waterfalls, well worthy of the tourists and locals to see. Is the development of easier access to these falls in consideration? That's another question there for you.
Very, very much so. It's something we obviously must look at. I remember recently I had a conversation with stakeholders, in fact, the National Parks and Beaches Authority. And I threw the idea out. I said, what is the best tourism site we have in St. Vincent? And they took a while to answer. And I said, it's Trinity Falls. As simple as it is, it's Trinity, not Darkview Falls, Trinity Falls. And I said, but it's closed. I said, we have to make it work.
And it has been closed for quite a while.
And we have to find the necessary remedial, whatever the challenges are to make it work. And one of the issues was the road. I said, well, I would like us to see, to put in place something for hiking. So if we can't drive there, we'll hike there. We'll put a package of program to hike. And we put in place the necessary restructuring and remedial work to ensure that you move there within a safe environment for you to travel there. I know one of the issues was they had some issues with the actual pool itself at the bottom of the fall. I understand that nature has naturally resolved that. But we have to look at, obviously, and using this COVID period, this downturn, and I see it quite strongly, using this period to boost and enhance a number of our ecotourism sites. On Friday, I traveled to North LEEWARD with a team from the Ministry of Sustainable Development, along with national parks. And we're going to look at ways in which we can enhance some of these sites, how we can, of course, take into account the environmental issues surrounding the use of the sites, obviously, and how we can develop on some of these going into the not too distant future. Again, there are persons who will come to St. Vincent not just for sun, sea, and sand because it's in Barbados or St. Lucia or somewhere else, but they come to St. Vincent for that uniqueness about the island. And we have, part of it is our ecotourism, and we have to obviously move in that direction to enhance some of our sites. And it's a very important point raised by the contributor.
We'll be back for a final segment in just a moment. So final segment, of course, our special guest on Round Table Talk this evening is the Honourable Carlos James. We've spoken a lot of stuff and we still haven't gotten to talking about civil aviation. We haven't really handled sustainable development, but we need to talk about North Leeward, the constituency that you represent. And strange enough, it's a constituency that's filled with culture, it's filled with talent, it's filled with history. What are your plans? What would you like to see happen in this 5-year term as far as North Leeward is concerned?
On the outset of it, I campaigned heavily in North Leeward on a number of platforms. One of the key pillars of the campaign in North Leeward in just recently concluded elections was to rebuild Chateaubriand as a model tongue. And I say rebuild Chateaubriand because we're going through a period of infrastructural development, reconstruction of bridges and roads and the local jetty and all of that. Easily, I would say we have spent over the last 5 years, when I was a caretaker before the parliamentary representative, $30 million in remedial works. And this is after disasters in 2013, December floods, 2010 Hurricane Thomas. And we're at the stage of completing the wharf in Chateaubriand, which is a $5 million project. We're in the stage of completing the bridge connecting parts of Chateaubriand for use to the rest of North Leeward. We have already secured roughly 70% of $110,000 through a charity Generation Next, which is a local charity, to rehabilitate the old agricultural depot in Chateaubriand. We're going to use that facility now to provide training for young persons and turn it into an agro-processing facility. Work on that is going to start early in January in the new year. We are looking at refurbishing the fisheries cooperative, the fisheries complex that is there in Chateaubriand. One investor who reached out to me said, listen, as soon as the wharf in Chateaubriand is completed, I want to use a badge to bring in gasoline and look at the possibility of reopening a gas station in the tongue itself. I also spoke of the construction of an administrative complex in the tongue itself, where we'll have one central location for your tongue board, your immigration as you clear and disembark, customs and immigration from the wharf, because there's also a port of entry, post office, and importantly, a financial institution. And I'm hoping when we construct that facility, a financial institution would be very keen and interested in putting their banking services there in Chateaubriand. Why do we have to come to Kingston to do basic commercial activity? And we have to decentralize our services. And part of the vision is to rehabilitate and rebuild Chateaubriand into a commercial hub where persons in North Leeward and persons who come by sea as well, because it's a port of entry, can operate within Chateaubriand and in the feel of a commercial environment. We have spent over $2 million in sporting facilities in Cumberland and Rosal, the multipurpose center in Rosebank. We're doing another facility there. In Trumuka, we have plans of doing one in Trumuka as well. So we have done some significant work. But importantly, one of the things that I have to look at is providing a lot of opportunities for training for young people. And we have had remarkable success under the education revolution. North Leeward is perhaps one of the only constituencies that can say out of the 8 villages we have in the constituency, we have at least one doctor. If we were to construct a health center in every village, we would have had at least one doctor from the constituency to service every single health center within the communities. We have had over a dozen doctors under the education revolution. We proudly have an aeronautical engineer from Spring Village. We have a number of persons in other technical areas, but importantly, in the hospitality services, we have to provide the training, we have to make provisions to accommodate persons who want to access the training. And when I spoke of the Technical Institute in Peterborough, persons were saying, well, you know, there's one in Barley, but I went in and did the research. The one in Barley has roughly 50% of the student population there are from North Leeward, and there are still a lot more persons who cannot get into the institute because it's filled to capacity. So we obviously have to create the opportunities for training, and the social safety net which we have, our social development planners have really spread across the education revolution in terms of training. The few persons who may have not been captured under that net, who may have left school at Form 2 or 3 for whatever reason, even though despite there's universal access to primary and secondary education, must be given that opportunity where we can give them access to vocational training. So I'm excited about that. I am quite keen to see the medicinal cannabis industry up and running, and we have a lot of persons in North Leeward who are very interested in that. A number of farmers, traditional farmers, have applied for license. Some have already started cultivating. There is one investor who's already, with local partners, they've already started the cultivation of a farm in Richmond area as part of the medicinal industry push. Cumberland Valley is a unique place. It's where we have one of the better sporting facilities in the Cumberland playing field, but also it's a unique location where we can see some development in tourism. When you leave Beaches by Sandals in Buckerman Bay and you come around to Mount Twin and you leave the Marriott that is going to be there and the Black Sands, the next suitable prime location for tourism development is the Cumberland Bay. And I am looking forward to the opportunity within the next 5 years to see persons they have already expressed an interest within that area. And I'm hoping to see some movement in that direction to bring some significant investment to the constituency where that is concerned.
Before you go, two things I want to ask you about. How do you respond to people who say that the North Leeward constituency is grossly neglected? And something else about the whole question of unemployment. What's the situation there? And what are some of your plans to remedy that situation? And there's a question that someone was asking, and I would like you to address it as well before time runs away with us. You have some good plans for tourism, and I know this is not your area, but it all ties in with what government is doing about the wages in St. Vincent in the tourism industry. How can one survive on $35 a day? Happy workers equal high productivity.
Right.
Over to you.
But I've mentioned the development of North Leeward in the last 5 years, where perhaps maybe one of the only constituencies where we've spent over 30 million.
And I'm sure a lot of people hearing that today for the first time.
Yeah. And if you travel to North Leeward, you would see the real life experience and examples of persons traversing the Cumberland Bridge into Spring Village. You go up to Cumberland, where if you look above, a new village was created called Hollywood. Those are persons who were displaced from the 2013 disaster.
Okay.
Brand new houses were constructed, built for these persons, relocated them. Persons in Spring Village and Rosebank and Fitzhugh and other places who were displaced due to natural disaster. Same thing applied in Fitzhugh. So we have really seen some significant responses, particularly to the emergent challenges of the global warming and climate change, within the government's response to these sort of challenges. And we have put the money in. We've invested significantly in rebuilding North Leeward. Now it's time to really move in the direction of generating what I would consider wealth creation and job creation and opportunities for training, which is a significant part of development. And if you don't put in place that broader framework of development and training for development, you would naturally, it's not just finding the jobs, but finding the right people and the skill sets to marry with the jobs that are going to become available. And importantly, farmers, it's one, agritourism is a big thing, and we have to look in that direction as well, because I'll just give you an example before we conclude. When Sandals opened here in St. Vincent, they're looking to buy over 700,000 pounds of fruits and vegetables from local farmers. Over 90,000 pounds of fish, and this is annually. 80,000 pounds of rice, 90,000 pounds of fish, 37,000 pounds of lettuce, 48,000 pounds of bananas. We have to really re-examine how we move in the direction of production, both to deal with the importation or food bill, and both to deal with our food security, and also the broader development framework of supply and demand. We export food, we have local consumption, but also we're going to have hotels with about an average daily, maybe as much as 1,000 plus guests. New guests added to the room stock that we have, who are going to be able to consume locally produced food, and we have to be able to prepare for that. So it's not just the idea of, the clerical jobs, but we have to look at the industry and manufacturing and agro-processing and farming and providing support to our fisher folk, because it is going to be a total transformation of our economy with tourism being at the center of that transformation. And I'm very fortunate to have one of the ministries taking that lead within this new economic push going into the next term.
And no better way on which to end this evening's program. Our special guest on Roundtable Talk was the Honourable Minister with responsibility for tourism, civil aviation, sustainable development and culture, and also the parliamentary representative for the North Leeward constituency. We thank you and we wish you all the best with these great ideas and plans, and we know you're going to work hard to make sure they come to fruition. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, see you next week. Bye.
Dengue is a flu-like illness spread by the bite of an Aedes mosquito infected with the dengue virus. The Aedes mosquito can breed even in a small amount of water accumulated in any container-like object. Severe headache, pain behind the eyes, nausea and vomiting, high fever with 2 or more of the following symptoms: severe muscle and joint pain, a rash on the skin, consult a doctor and do as advised. If advised hospital admission, do so immediately. If advised home-based care, take plenty of fluids, nutritious food and paracetamol for fever and pain. Prevent mosquito breeding and protect against mosquito bites. There is no treatment for dengue, but dengue can be prevented.
Fire and dice. Together on one scratch ticket, can make your dreams come true. Yes, it's Fire and Dice. The new $10 scratch game with thousands of dollars to be won. Match your numbers with any of the winning numbers and win the prize shown up to $125,000. You can double or triple your prize with Fire and Dice. Available from all lotto agents and runners. There's cash to catch with just a scratch.